Welcome, everybody. It's Friday. Let's have some fun. Can you see the error I made? I forgot to buy something very important. Do you know what that thing is? That's right. It's a blue screen. I forgot to buy a blue screen, which means when I put on my green shirt for Venus Day for Friday, I become invisible. Look at that. We're just going to roll with it and have fun. And you'll have to imagine that I'm wearing green. I'll do that so I look a little less headless, bodiless. I'm a spirit of the air. I'm a spirit of the air. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Blue screen, I will get one right away so that for Fridays you can see my green shirt. Yes. Welcome, everybody. It was a slight delay because I was finishing up Marcus Katz live stream, which was a lot of fun. He was doing something that surprised me, which was the Book of the Law. And I thought, of course, he was a Golden Dawn guy, but it seems he's a Golden Dawn and Thelemic guy, which is very common, and led to a really shocking comment he made. That's something I've been sort of looking for, suspicious about for a very long time. And we all know that despite the fact that it's quite clear Crowley was hostile to the Golden Dawn after things went sideways, I mean, Mathers really went on a limb for him, or you could say tried to use him, but I don't think that's accurate, by trying to bring him past the barriers that were set up for him in London. And so Mathers, gave him Sefer Sephiroth to publish, and which he expanded as 777. But then, of course, Crowley started publishing all of Mathers' stuff, the secret stuff, the grade material, and so that led to a court case. I'm still looking for the book with the court case information on it, so we can read it and have fun British accents and enjoy the hilarity of the fact that the solicitor or barrister, I'm not quite sure the difference between those two things in England. We call them lawyers. His name's Scorpio, so you've got dialogue in the court case between Crowley, Mathers, and a guy called Scorpio, which is just too appropriate for words. It's magic. Good to see everyone. And yeah, it's good to see someone found me from the live chat on Marcus, the Cool Cats channel. That was really nice. So what Marcus said, and if you were in that live stream, I was stunned by it, was that Crowley in his notebooks apparently explicitly does say he created Thelema to break the Golden Dawn and to show people it had no secrets and nothing special to offer whatsoever. And so that's what I always suspected. But my Thelemic friends always said, no. He was just doing his own thing. He wasn't like trying to attack the Golden Dawn, which I always thought was, okay. But I didn't have any hard evidence that Crowley was actually doing what I thought he was doing. And now I have that evidence from Marcus Katz, so that's very cool. And I look forward to having Marcus Katz on the podcast if he's up for it sometime. There's quite the time change between Vancouver and England. It's an 8-hour one, and so it's tricky sometimes to arrange those things. Yeah, he's a nice, soft-spoken British gentleman, it seems to me. And yeah, I look forward to having him on the podcast. Maybe we can all be friends. All right, I just realized my good mic's not on. Let's put on the good mic. I did that way too long yesterday on the live stream, so let's not do that mistake. How's the microphone now? Does that sound better? I hope that sounds better. All right, now before we dive into our really interesting topic today, something I've been waiting to do for ages with you all, I've tried to encourage you all to look at this bit of research in the past. I've been on my high horse about it since 2020 when it was released, even though it's from the 80s. But it didn't hit the light of day till 2020 in January when Adam McLean released it on his website. So we're going to have fun. I hope you're here. Become a channel member, like and subscribe if you can. Share the show, and if you can support the chat with super chats or buying gift memberships. That's great. But even more important than all of that, we have an event coming up online and in person. If you want to come to Austin, Texas, for our upcoming EnokiaCon, our D and Kelly conference. That is a esotericism conference. The theme is D and Kelly, but you can find presentations and workshops on a wide range of things, not just D and Kelly and Enochian. Let's be clear about that. It has a theme, like many conferences do, but it's not an exclusive theme, because that would be boring. That would be boring. Not that we'll run out of D and Kelly stuff. So, without further ado, here's a quick glimpse at what we have coming up in Austin this November, and the list of amazing presenters, with more added to the list for the next promo trailer. And so enjoy this little song. The other mic was better? No, this mic's better. This one might not be as loud. Let me fix the sound. Thanks for saying something. I can guarantee you this mic is better. All right, how's that sound now? I can always tweak this thing. I have full control over this mic. The other mic I started off using was the default computer mic, which is not a bad mic, but this one I have more control over. And if it's not loud enough, you can let me know. So, Angelo, is the other mic still better? Tell me, because I just might need better mic placement, or to up the gain or volume. Yeah, it's fine. All right, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm a musician, so I've been sound engineering for over 20 years, and I love to try and make things as good as I can. But one of the flaws of this setup is I can't actually hear what you're hearing, really. I could do that sort of. Let me see. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good. I actually can listen to myself. Okay. Yeah. Let's dive into it. Yeah. Register for EnochiaCon. Go to arcaneresearchsociety.com. And here's a song I wrote about our upcoming event. All right. Let's dive into it. Hope you dug the tune. Going to add some upright bass and then make a new video for it to promote the additional workshops and presenters that are showing up in November, since it's going to be more than 50 person now. It's going to be more like a 100 person event. And so you should jump on board now and don't miss it, because these are all very, very unique events. I'm glad you like it, Tracy. Thank you. All right. So Roger Parisious is a very interesting researcher. And his theory, as from his work as the archivist for the Yeats archive for Anne Yates, who's since passed on, of course, and being the secretary for the Theosophical Society in Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, has a theory about the origin of the rider-waite tarot. And actually, I even finally got myself the original deck of the rider-waite with from the prints from the plates before they were destroyed in the war, I believe, and seeing the original coloring that Pixie Smith, the adept who did the art, was really interesting. Again, it just gives you a sense of the historical time and place that they were in, and the style of the art and coloring that we see. Most modern decks are recolored and even slightly touched up in their shapes. So yeah, the rider-waite deck is an amazing deck, and the story behind it is even more crazy than you would expect. Let's check it out.
Appropriate is Roger Parisious, who will talk on Figures in a Dance, W.B. Yeats and the Waite Rider Tarot. Now, this is a completely original topic. Some time ago, Roger came to me with some of his ideas and said, "You know all about Waite. Is this right?" And to my dismay, he had seen things I had never even dreamed of. And he's right. They are there. It's not imagination. He's actually worked in an area I had somehow overlooked. And I'm sure this indicates the fact that in many areas of research within the Golden Dawn, there are many things that have not been looked at. The paper we just heard indicates that to begin with. But I won't try to...
Yeah, so take that, everyone who's like, oh, the mysteries of the Golden Dawn were published a long time ago by Regalia. Yeah, not even a little bit.
Preempt anything Roger says. I'll tell you something about him. He is the archivist for Anne Yates, and thus he's very familiar with all the original Yates manuscripts. He's also General Secretary of the Theosophical Society of Ireland, which is very much a non-adyar body, and therefore it is rational. And he is also, as a consequence, familiar with the whole range of Western and Eastern esoteric thought. So he has the background from which all this has been brought up. At the same time, as the ideas are both original and important, and as I would stress, this is the first time they have been brought out in public, it is fair to state that they are going to be published in due course in book form. And the ideas are copyrighted, insofar as one can copyright an idea in the way they are presented. As this is being recorded, so it constitutes a copyright anyway. I would say this because one has to do it purely for legal reasons. Anyway, without more ado, I'll introduce Roger Parisious.
The first thing I'd like to ask, I assume everyone here knows the Waite Rider Tarot. How many here know the work of W.B. Yeats? A fairly good number. So, nevertheless, some explications may be necessary on that side. I'm going to make two major claims today, and as Bob has indicated, I think both have very far-reaching implications which cannot be touched on in the next 20 to 25 minutes. And frankly, all of these depend on very elaborate proofs that have meant chasing annotated copies in the Yates house to Win Westcott's star charts, back to people who knew Pamela Colman Smith in 1907 or 8. It has been an elaborate quest on which I began many years ago, thinking it would take about 6 months back in 1968, as I was going to do a quick MA at that time. Well, I never filed that MA because when I wanted it done right. I'll thereupon make two claims. One, which has been ignored by everyone, quite reasonably, as the article has never been republished, is Waite's review of his own work in December 1909 on the publication of his two books on tarot, one of which has been completely ignored by all critics. One, of course, is the Pictorial Key to the Tarot, which, by the way, again can be divided into two. The key to the tarot is not the same as the pictorial key to the tarot. Absolutely major alterations have been made in the method of divination. Furthermore, a series of over 800 words have been added with specific reference to the pictorial designs. In fact, if the two copies had been read simultaneously, many confusions that have been going for the last 70-some years would never have been begun. At the same time, Waite published a third book, the Manual of Cartomancy, under the pseudonym Grand Orient. He acknowledged authorship in a letter published in 1933 by his American bibliographer. No one else except myself took any notice of this until Leslie Shepard republished the books in 1971 with a preface. However, Mr. Shepard took the book at face value. The fact is, the book is a key. There were 3 deliberate publications made. Following the 3 publications, the Manual for Cartomancy, the Key to the Tarot, and the Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and the article, The Tarot, A Wheel of Fortune, published in Occult Review for December 1909, a 5th book was brought out, the Book of Destiny, which has never been republished from 1912. All of these books are part of a common scheme. In fact, nearly everything that Waite wrote between 1903 and 1915 is coded, a code which has been failed to be perceived by any of his critics, either pro or con, and I am speaking advisedly. Every word. This thing is more charged than Finnegan's Wake or Alice in Wonderland. In fact, either pales by comparison. Waite did not have one secret. He had numerous secrets he was concealing. One of them, of course, was his co-author. He very graciously thanks Miss Pamela Coleman Smith in the December 1909 article, and another who was versed and who was a third collaborator on the pack. The collaboration is never mentioned at any other point in Waite's life, at least not ostensibly. It will be my claim today that the co-author of the Tarot Pack and also the co-creator of the most influential piece of iconography in the last 400 years, and also the greatest literary hoax since Thomas Thorpe decided to append Shakespeare's name to Edward de Vere's sonnets, was none other than W.B. Yeats. Yeats, in fact, gave more than metaphors to, not only was he taking metaphors for poetry from the spirits, he gave metaphors to both T.S. Eliot and Charles Williams, both of whom accepted them without knowing that Yeats was the actual creator of the pack. There, in fact, were 2 parallel firms going. By the way, this is already a large claim in and of itself. The secondary claim I'm going to make with this, and of course the more important from the viewpoint of the people here today, is that the pack is something rather different than it has been supposed to have been. Number 1, it is an ars memoria. The tarot is literally a great wheel, which is why Waite called his article, The Tarot, A Wheel of Fortune. And in fact, he even puts in a note in the pictorial key to thank Grand Orient, the author of Manual of Cartomancy, who happens to be himself, and says if he understands the author's intentions correctly, he rather thinks that the Wheel of Fortune might be the most appropriate name for the entire pack. Why? Because it can be arranged as a circular diagram which rotates. In the Manual of Cartomancy, he publishes a great wheel of Pythagoras, and he follows with a series of further wheels and squares. Each one of these contains further mathematical and linguistic qualifications of what he has done the first time around. Let's start with literally the most elementary method. After all, Waite says in so many words that he does not wish to he finds the permutations of the Hebrew letters cumbersome. And after all, this is an elementary handbook. He means exactly what he says. It deals with the 4 elements, fire, earth, air, and water, each one attributed to one letter. This is a very simple handbook. You're using 5 basic letters of the divine name, Yod, He, Vav, He, and of course Shin, which if you'll notice carefully is being worn by a number of the characters in addition to the Fool. However, look a little more deeply into your pack. More specifically yet, these 4 suits of the tarot, or specifically, the book was not written alone. It was written in addition to the series of publications specifically on tarot with a very large book called The Hidden Church of the Holy Grail, which concludes with a long section on the hallows of the tarot as being the 4 hallows of the Grail castle. This appears in all historical probability to be correct. In fact, Waite and Yates had numerous historical sources for this, which they did not choose to give out. However, they can be located and they are available. And in fact, this should be emphasized that these hallows are found in the lower arcana, not in the greater arcana. But the entire 650-page book of the Hidden Church of the Holy Grail is not about the King Arthur legend at all. It's about the tarot pack as a reinterpretation of the Arthurian legend. I'll give you the key right now. And Waite is saying, in fact, he goes through the adventure of Parzival. Parzival is, of course, the fool, wearing his red feather. At a certain point in the story, Parzival kills a red knight and puts on his costume. He is, of course, the Knight of Wands. And in case so we don't miss it, Waite inserts the remark in his 2nd edition.
So for some background, one of the reasons this is such an amazing lecture to only see the light of day in 2020, right before COVID kicked off, a paper had been delivered either previously or after this because of, again, of the lack of awareness of this. Well, anyway, Tabby Cicero had done a paper on the theory that it was the German Parzival story by Wolfram von Eschenbach that formed the inspiration and basis to the layout and design of the rider-waite deck. So this is contradicting that and proposing an alternative theory of which Grail mythology was actually used.
His motion is a clue to the precipitate character of its rider. A precipitate character is, of course, a character on the edge of a precipice. And what is his clue? The horse, if you look closely, has his legs crossed in the form of a swastika. He is doing a dance. Take it further. So we are told in so many words that the Knight of Swords as if he were Galahad. It's not if he were Galahad, he is Galahad. Carrying it further, the Knight of Pentacles is Sir Gawain. Waite makes a great fuss about the fact of how lowly and obscure and corrupt Gawain is. As a matter of fact, he's the Knight of Pentacles, and we'll have something else. In fact, he even gets his pen.
I mean, yeah, when it comes to the Welsh Arthurian legends, I mean, I love the Welsh Arthurian legends, but I do think Parzival by Wolfram von Eschenbach is my favorite Arthurian text. I love that one, and you should read it too. You'll see what I mean.
Anagram inverted at one point, as Waite knew very well from the story about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And number 4, of course, there's Sir Lancelot, who comes in as the Knight of Cups. We can keep this going. Guinevere is, of course, the Queen of Wands. Arthur's reverser, and she's unfaithful. Waite has all these lines about King Arthur's faithless queen. However, we'll go and take it back, of course. By the way, the line about the dismemberment of the Arthurian Empire, of course, Arthur is the emperor. And when Merlin, of course, is the magician. One can go on absolutely indefinitely. The entire pack.
This is a claim, Lord of Ness. If it weren't for the Knights Templar, neither of the Rosicrucians, there's no evidence for that whatsoever. But I know why you think that. I mean, that's the story we tell.
Is coded to the 600-page tarot book. Let's take it a little further than this. Waite persistently tells us that the Grail was moving about, that the castle was here today and gone tomorrow. He means exactly what he said. When he says the authors were poles apart, he means exactly that. He's got them on his wheel, and they are literally poles apart, like from north to south, moving from east to west. After a while, given certain keys, you reverse the motion. All right, next one, around. Let's go back to the pictorial key to the tarot. One of these little tricks on which he has literally stood everybody on their head for the last 70-some years, and I'm afraid no clairvoyant sense ever warned them about this one. When he says reverse, he does not mean inverse. He draws a very clear distinction in his definition of the 15th card, the devil, who has the 2 points up above and the 1 point pointed downward. He twice says it's reversed and once that it is inverse. Reverse refers to the motion of the pack. The cards are a kaleidoscope. Taken on one level, they are a three-dimensional turning sphere. When he says the secrets belong to the sphere of prudence, which is a most occult sphere, he means exactly what he is saying. Let's take it a little further than that. Of course, the sphere group to which Waite belonged was headed by none other than Florence Farr.
I mean, does the tarot have its roots in ancient Egypt and possibly Atlantis? No. The tarot's history is extremely well researched and well known, and there's lots of great books on it. So, yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. And Atlantis is a fictional place written about by Plato in a fiction story. Whether he was secretly trying to hide reference to an actual lost civilization is what, led to the great industry around Atlantis that we all enjoy and love, including myself, to this very day. Doesn't change the fact that it seems to be impossible to get around the issue that Atlantis was written about in fiction. If Plato had written about it in his history, I mean, that would be another thing. Also, there's just been no evidence of discovering anything similar to what is Atlantis. Like the Rishad structure is completely, not possibly, it doesn't compare at all to what was described of Atlantis or its location, though a lot of people keep grifting on the whole Rishad structure. Is that what the name of it? The Rishad structure? Anyway, yeah. A worthy question.
And Waite, again, referring to a sphere group, which is a most occult sphere, is specifically identifying the group which started the wheel turning. I have seen Mrs. Farr's private papers, Mrs. Emery more correctly, and the fact is, yes, she was working with spinning the Fool's 8-pointed star about.
Hello.
But let's go a little further here. I hope I'm not going too rapidly for you, and I realize this is somewhat astonishing, or maybe what I'm saying here today.
Cool.
Of course, the theme. In 1932, I'm going to jump to the other end of the line. In addition to conferences that W.B. Yates, that is to say, was having around 1903 to 4, which I'll document with A.E. Waite on the subject of the Arthurian legend, the actual date was somewhere around mid-January of 1903. In about approximately 1918, another young gentleman of strong poetic abilities and strong theological leanings, one Charles Williams, was to pick up Waite's The Hidden Church of the Holy Grail.
Yes, that's the basic history of the tarot, that it was derived from a playing card game in the Renaissance. Yeah.
He went on to write what some critics regard as the best treatment of the Arthurian legend since the medieval period. However, quite apart from that, has been overlooked. He wrote a second book, or novel, not overlooked, but they have never been combined, called The Greater Trumps. The fact is, everything that I'm telling you today was broken by Charles Williams back in 1932. He describes at great length the tarot dance, and he describes specifically, and I'm citing page 33 of the first edition, how there are two patterns, one of squares and one of circles, so that the eyes is with a chessboard, so now one and now the other predominant.
It's too bad they didn't
film
these.
The chessboard is specifically shown upon the Queen of Wands, whom I've already mentioned, upon the Ten of Pentacles, and upon the...
Which imagery do you prefer, RC? Asks Amina. The Marseille or rider-waite? I mean, the rider-waite, he gives images to the pip cards to the minor arcana and comes from 3 Golden Dawn adepts with their collected insight and wisdom, you could say, as well as it displays this mystery that is being discussed about in this thing. The Marseille decks, there's a certain charm to them for sure, but I never really used them at all, whereas I learned on the rider-waite. But my favorite decks these days are, modern Golden Dawn decks like Nick Farrell's or the Robert Wang, the Ciceros, Pat Zaleski's. I like those decks. And when it comes for non-Golden Dawn decks, I usually use the Visconti or the Scarpini. I really like the Scarpini, but I also use Crowley's Thoth deck a lot because the images are just so beautiful. And his interpretations of the cards are so blunt and brutal. It's sometimes very helpful for mundane readings with mundane people because they can relate better to words like debauchery and lust, and gets them excited. And again, the cards are gorgeous.
Pope, if you will, the Emperor, for reasons that I cannot, there's not time to do so today.
Not sure what
we'll
you
get
mean.
to the next thing. The fact is you have got the diagram right there. It is further stated specifically in the hidden church of the Holy Grail that the Fool received a chessboard.
I don't know what you mean.
The Knight of Wands represents the Fool. His motion is a key to the precipitate character of the rider. The entire pack moves as a series of knights' moves, branching out in 4 different directions from the center, the symbol of the swastika about the poles. When Waite keeps talking about the poles moving, and when Yeats writes about the hidden pole, he means exactly that. The first public breaking of this story from a metaphysical point of view was made in France in 19...
I mean, the Marseille decks are what the Golden Dawn members all used. The Marseille deck is what they colored with Golden Dawn symbolism, color methods in the inner order, and it's what they worked with. And there's a lot of really cool symbolism in the Marseille decks, and there's so many different Marseille decks. They're all different, right? I talked to what's his name, Stav Appel, about his theory on the Jewish secrets hidden in one edition of the Marseille deck, which hypothetically I think is very possible. But he's getting a lot of flack for that theory. Oh boy. It's unfortunate that it's hard to discern whether the flack that Stav Appel is getting is because people think his theory is actually wrong, or because they just hate all people like him. I don't even want to say what that is on YouTube these days because people are getting banned for that kind of anti-you-know-what talk. So unfortunately, it's hard to tell if the critics just hate people like him or actually have a solid argument against him. And I haven't been following it close enough to know. The Gypsy Witch Tarot for the debauchery enthusiasts. I love it. Yeah, again, I'm not sure what more ways to mess up the mythology means, but sure. Yeah, share your thoughts, share your opinions. Oh, I understand the Sailor Jerry classic tattoo style that was popular in the U.S. Navy sailors. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's the art style of the era, I think, is what it was.
25 by a man named René Guénon in a book called The King of the World, which has now been translated into English. Despite some mistranslations, I urge that the book be read.
Yeah, apparently the only Guénon book that isn't translated into English is the one that shows that he's a fascist or something. I don't know. I've never been into Guénon and it doesn't interest me that much, but maybe I'll learn more about him at some point.
There is one important chapter called The Symbolism of the Grail, which I published separately in Studies of Comparative Religion as far back as 1966. It's been reprinted about 2 years ago. I'd hoped to do the whole book, but frankly, we couldn't interest anyone in doing an entire book on the primordial tradition at this particular point. I was very much aware as a young person that these images seemed to be in the tarot pack, but it seemed impossible.
Yeah, I love the AOS tarot deck and all of that. I mean, I wish I had $500 to afford a copy. And Parlis says, welcome to the show, everybody. Yeah, like and subscribe, people. Thanks for being here on this chill Friday. After all, if anyone wants to mess up a divination deck, just put it out there during a holiday season. I mean, I don't think that messes up a deck. It probably just sells more copies for whoever designed it. And, most people who design these things generally, I think, lose money on them. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to sell it during the holiday season. How's it going, Nullhu? In the house? Good. I'm good. We won't be going crazy long today. Famous last words, I know, but no, I have to run off to my once a month. Me and my buddies from high school and a few other guys get together, and we're playing Dolmenwood, which is like this fairy tale kind of D&D game in person that we do. Brothers of Light 77 says, I love the Marseille text, to be honest. Yes, we got counter opinion here. They're my favorite, and there's lots of lore behind them regarding the Cathars by Russell Stooges, and they originated with the original Knights Templars in the Code of the Ancient. Yeah, the Knights Templar stuff, when it comes to me, here's something for you all to know. When it comes to me, claims about the Knights Templar and their role in all of this history needs to be proven, because a lot of that history is nonsense. So if you ever want me, you can say whatever you want. I don't mind. I love the New Age woo-woo crazy theories, and they're not all crazy. But if you want to make claims to be accepted about the role of the Templars, like in the tarot, there's no connection between the Templars and the tarot that's ever been historically proven. You'd have to have solid evidence. You should put out a paper on it. You should make a public argument if you have some evidence in your back pocket on that stuff. All right, do a couple more comments. Rudolf Steiner, in one of his lectures in his esoteric lessons, yeah, I got those up on my shelf. They're good things. Now, finally released in English and as well as German, mentions how the tarot cards were actually dates back to, yeah, but he's wrong. Steiner, when it comes to history, just makes stuff up. Like, he wasn't a historian. The ancient mysteries of the Bible. Yeah, I love the Bible. Dang, that's for rich kids and pros or hustlers. I don't know what you're referring to, Brian. So Disney, so Once Upon I'm not sure what you're referring to, Parlous, but Once Upon a Time was filmed just down the road where I grew up here outside of Vancouver. That's where that show was filmed. But I don't know what's Disney. What is Disney that you're referring to? Can explain why Waite such heavily incorporated Egyptian imagery into the deck besides being. That's why. That's Egyptian. So Egyptology was all the rage. The research being done and the books being put up by E.A. Wallace Budge were awfully translated and led to so many misreadings and misunderstandings that it took decades to correct. But that's why there's so much Egyptian symbolism, because Waite was including the Egyptian symbolism. And Egyptian symbolism was popular within the esoteric world long before the Golden Dawn, of course. It goes back to the Memphis Mizraim rite of Freemasonry and all kinds of other estuaries that fed into the Western esoteric development. Yeah, but that's the main reason why he includes Egyptian imagery. And there's not that much Egyptian imagery in the Rider-Waite deck. As you'll see in this lecture, the Rider-Waite deck is based on Celtic mythology mostly. Check out the Bible, the Book of Revelation. I mean, I'm a priest. I'm well familiar with the Book of Revelation. And if the 22 chapters align perfectly with the 20 major arcana, that's a very cool idea. Where'd you get that from? I'll definitely look at that. But I don't, knowing that book really well, I don't see any alignment in particular to the major arcana. But it's a fun theory. That's a fun theory. I mean, are you saying that because of the Hebrew letters that are used to versify some books in the Bible? I'm curious, because the 22 trumps correspond with the 22 Hebrew letters doesn't mean that all of occurrences of lists of 22 Hebrew letters in the Bible have anything to do with the tarot. So bed knobs. Okay. Oh, cool. Interesting. I'll check that out. Yeah. Oh man, so many things, so many good recommendations from you all to check out. That's very cool. Check out videos by Timothy Hogan. Yeah, he's admitted that he makes stuff up. He admits he makes that stuff up. He knows that it's historically false, and he said he just wants to believe it anyway because he likes the mythology of it. He's admitted that publicly, but it's not historical. The things he says on his channel and in his tradition, he's admitted that it's mythological. They want to believe it. They know it's not historically true, and that's cool. The fact that he admits that is cool. It's like, yeah, okay, then. It's kind of like a religion, like, do your thing. Yeah, I have lots of friends who are into that and in that group with him and our Knights Templars. And I think it's fine to reconstruct a modern idea of the heroism and knightly qualities of chivalry and largesse that came out of that era. I think that's a beautiful thing, and again, nothing wrong with it. But it's good that he admits that it's not historically accurate, the stuff he claims. Well, again, it's quite a debated thing if Egyptian mysticism was the foundation that the Bible and Christian mysticism were founded on. I mean, I could get into that, but it's a lot longer thing. Yeah, the mythologies transmit cross-culturally. That doesn't mean that the people who wrote the different texts in one scripture were basing it on a previous spirituality, but previous spiritualities influence the development of later ones. If there's points of cultural contact, which there was between what we call Israel and a certain era of Egyptian culture. But even that era of Egyptian culture was nothing really similar to the original era of Egyptian culture. They're more far from each other than we are from the latter era. Yeah. yeah. It's all Egyptian. Anything cool is Egyptian. The preceptories and Freemason has, I mean, all that stuff. Like, yeah, of course. I mean, look at the Golden Dawn with its silly cipher manuscripts that Mathers fabricated just to give himself credibility. Yeah, well, then it probably loses if the Waite Trinic deck, which is more abstract than the rider-waite, it probably loses a lot of the significance that Roger Parisious, his name's misspelled here on the screen. On the screen it says Parisious, but it's Parisious. Last few comments. I'm pretty sure I've heard Mathers GD deck. What's the Mathers GD deck? I don't think there is a Mathers GD deck. The official, or the deck, the first Golden Dawn deck based on all the original images is coming out this year or next year from Frater Yekida over at Cherubim Press in Dublin. Check again. Chapter 1 is I mean, again, you're just creating a pattern. If you're just corresponding the tarot trumps to the Book of Revelation, and if you see connections in that, that's great for you spiritually. There's no historical connection between the two, and you can see an anagogical connection wherever you want. That's the nature of patterns and shapes and forms and drawing theologies between things. You can do that, but there isn't one nascent between the Book of Revelation and the tarot. And Secret Teachings of All Ages is, I mean, it's fun, but it's not a highly accurate text. Manly P. Hall just sort of, again, said what he wanted to say, and that's why he didn't footnote or give evidence for the claims he was making, because he was just rolling with it. He was being creative. Yeah, that again, there's no connection between, I've said enough on that. I'm an anthroposophist too. Amina, nice to meet you. I went to Waldorf School 13 years. I've taught classes and studied Steiner since the late 1980s. Good to hear that you're a fellow anthroposophist. This is dir zu nett zu treffen. You want to hear my reasoning as to why you're dismissive of Steiner? Because Steiner historically just made stuff up based on his clairvoyant perceptions. I mean, yeah. And the GD knows that the tarot doesn't come from Egyptian mysteries. The Golden Dawn people were well familiar with the history of the tarot, and they knew that it didn't actually come from Egypt. They're just drawing a anagogical connection. That's the line. That's the word, the $5 word you want there is the anagogical connection, a spiritual connection. But it's being created by us here in the present, didn't exist back in Egypt or in the Bible times in the past. And that's just a distinction we draw so that we can remain, maintain our intellectual integrity. Yeah, the cults of that time were extremely poorly informed on a great many topics. We've come a very long way since then, but their understanding of history and science and many things was extremely poor, especially when it came to looking at the ancient origins of mysteries. They tended to rely on very unsupported research. That's one way to put it. You're not holding it up. It's fine. It's good. This is what we're here for, is to interact and talk and, Templars were disbanded. Well, they were more than disbanded. Like, disbanded's a nice word. It's like how the Germans disbanded people in the 30s and 40s. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can believe that. There's just no, again, it's not a historical thing, and don't take that as don't take that badly. Just because something's not historically connected to something else doesn't mean you can't draw a spiritual connection between the two. No. Cage, good to see you there, my Canadian brother. Yeah. Wow, so many comments today. Jesus. Wow, we'll just have fun with these. I think we have enough time. We've gotten halfway through the presentation, only 15 minutes left, so we have time to do a lot of comments. Psalms 119 also has the word listed 42 times. Yeah, I mean, again, so yeah, you can create a lot of spiritual connections that are really interesting between all of this stuff, and it's good for us spiritually today. But where you don't want to go is saying like, oh, this was hidden in the Bible. It's not hidden in the Bible. Yeah, I mean, there's a theory that the Roma created the tarot that's recently, I've heard, has been largely debunked, but I'm sure someone will then debunk that. And that's why I don't get into the history of the tarot. It doesn't interest me that much. I'm more interested in modern uses of the tarot. But the historians are going to keep going back and forth on that stuff. What's most likely is that card and cartomancy, card divination and card games were just more ubiquitous than sometimes we'd like to think, and these things mixed around and moved about in Europe and came together and then were codified in different times and places into these beautiful decks with gold leaf on them and made for nobles. Philistines and Canaanites were not from Celtic people. No, the Galatians were the Celts. The Philistines and Canaanites have no connection to the Galatians and the Celts, as far as I know. This is something I'm up on, but if there's some new evidence, send me the academic paper. Let me know, because I would love to read that. I always keep up to date on the history of the Celtic peoples. The Galatians in the Bible, the epistle to the Galatians, those were Celts who lived just across the strait from Byzantium there. They were Celts, and then they moved up through Europe after that era. Thank you very much, Cage. The occult mysticism tarot stuff gets complicated quickly. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Oh, you're posting the emojis. Post the cool emojis. I have the coolest channel emojis. So if you become a channel member, you get access to all the coolest emojis on YouTube. Alan Green asks, oh yeah, send me an email. Go to you can check out, send me an email if you want to check it out, or put in the comments below the video. Yeah, do that. Lord of Ness, Rosto is the name of the region comprising the Giza Plateau. Necropolis, the Great Pyramids, and Sphinx of Giza were built. The Knights Templar transferred Rosto into Rose Cross. Well, that's debated, I'm sure. Again, all that stuff needs evidence if you want to make historical claims. I don't go for this like Manly P. Hall style of history at all. Always thought the round animistic deck. Okay, that's cool. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool that they have that. Got to rewatch those movies. Yeah, apophenia. We make connections. We see patterns. Like if you take the numbers associated with the pyramid. What are you talking about? Just checking it. I don't know what you're talking about, brother. Everything's going great. I just got back from our wonderful event in Austin, Texas, and I'll be back there to do our Anagogical in November. So join online or in person and be part of one of the biggest occult events of the 21st century. What were we talking about? Yeah, you can look at the numbers of the pyramids, for example, and then, or of anything, and then just go look throughout the world and see what those numbers relate to and be like, oh, look, they were intentionally doing this, but they usually weren't. Yeah, the anthroposophical study group saying what spent an hour reading Prozac, and then old lady had to fuss about the meeting going on. Okay. Yeah, they're aging. They failed like so many organizations to appeal to younger generations, and that is usually how these things die out, is they stop appealing to younger generations. Yeah, the Templars were disbanded. That's a nice word for what they were, what was done to them. I can't call you after the show. I have to go. Sorry. A few more. Lost of mystery gets lost. Yeah, that doesn't mean that we still don't know what things happened in history. History is a very well-studied subject. Just passing through, Talia. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good day here in overcast Vancouver. Yeah, Roma definitely used tarot cards. Whether they are the origin of them is something I think that's debated. But again, I'm not the tarot historian. So if there was a real answer out there, we may never know. We'll probably no. We know real answers. We know a lot of the real answers around the Templars and the history of all this stuff. We have extremely good ideas, which is why it's easy to debunk when esotericists throw out random stuff. It's really easy to debunk because we actually do know so much. I mean, sure, you have to spend decades in universities to learn that stuff, but we do know stuff. Let's listen to a bit more, and then I'll get to back to the comments.
Tradition had not been broken until 1925. Wrong. The tradition had been broken in a 1,000-page book in 2 volumes, published between 1893 and 1897, with the specific aid of E. Wallace Budge of the British Museum, and later member, as I presume, of Florence Farr's Sphere group. The book is by John O'Neill, and Waite gave the story himself.
That would be very weird if Wallace Budge was part of Florence Farr's Sphere group, because Wallace Budge wasn't in the Golden Dawn, as far as I've never seen his name on any of the rolls. So that would be very weird if he was in the Sphere group, which was for advanced adept working in the vault. It was done by the best magicians in the order who wanted to do more serious conjuration work in the inner order temples. So it would be very odd if E.A. Wallace Budge was part of that at all. I don't know why I said that.
He gives it away. He goes raging against these people who are trying to give fake Egyptian origins to the tarot pack, and then remarks as if it might not be found in some strange night of the gods. Well, that's exactly where it's found. You go to the British Museum. Unfortunately, they don't have it catalogued under N. The author is John O'Neill, and I'm afraid his name is unknown to posterity. He was the friend of nearly every learned man of his time, and he had been to Japan, where he had watched Shinto dancers making their steps upon, and had been instructed by a learned Shinto priest. Later, he went to Cyprus, the home of the Templars, where he met a Sufi master who again instructed him in the dance footprints upon the sand. It is from watching these 2 ritual dances that O'Neill became convinced that there was a primordial tradition, which was based not on an east-west axis, but a north-south axis, and that the 7 originally were the 7 stars about the pole, not the 7 planets, and that in fact a whole history of mankind could be reconstituted through tracing the literal widening involuted spires coming down from the pole. It is a book which well needs to be reprinted. O'Neill writes at the end of Volume 1 that he has not had time to read James Fraser, but after his 20 years of effort, he now can settle back and read Fraser. He was dead 4 months later. There was no trouble finding a second publisher for the 2nd volume. The friends were generous. They had included, as I say, every well-known nipponologist and sinologist of their time, E. Wallace Budge and Alfred Nutt, author of the major work on the Holy Grail. Please get these connections closely here. Financed the 2nd volume of O'Neill. It appeared in 1897. O'Neill had finished the book, Volume 1, in 1891. He says it would only take 4 months to do his 2nd volume. It appears that his editors were having much more trouble understanding what the connections between his notes were. Not improbable, as he's the only person to have ever attempted up to this point and to this day any similar lengthy exposition. I cannot recommend the reading of the work sufficiently. However, one of the people who read it was W.B. Yeats. I would put the time of the reading most specifically around 1895, but I won't bore you with technicalities today. So we have one source here. MacGregor Mathers talks a little bit about Cather being the hidden pole, but he doesn't have any of this. More specifically, it was Yates, who was reading at the same time, who conceived the idea, and the markings are still in his library, that the primordial tradition was to be found in the ancient Welsh version of the Parsifal tale. It was he who brought the story to Waite, who in fact had no use for folklore. In fact, if you read Waite's own comments of his January 1903 meeting with Yates, he's quite put out as to why Yates, in fact, he wants to get him out of there before he has to listen to any more Celtic folklore. But, so therefore, however, Yeats did bring Waite something very, very precise. He also brought him more than that. In 1902, December specifically, in other words, 30 days before the time of the meeting with Waite, Yeats was receiving the designs from a young lady named Pamela Colman Smith for a play called Where There Is Nothing. Where There Is Nothing, later changed in a second version in 1907 to The Unicorn from the Stars.
Yeah, that's a great play, actually. I'd love to read some plays out. So I directed a lot of Yeats's plays back in the 90s and other plays, mostly Yeats plays. Did like 6 or 7 of them, and I'm a big fan.
Where there is nothing. Well, that's exactly what Nancy and Henry Lee are saying in The Greater Trumps, or old Aaron Lee tells them everything depends upon the fool's position. Where there is nothing. Waite himself comes back to it in his edition of Eliphas Levy's History of Magic in 1913. The whole secret is to where the fool is located. I frankly grew up on these books and thought this was a general thing in tarot tradition. It is not. The answer, and by the way, Waite published his own answer. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so he's referring to something here you might not be aware of, which is that the Golden Dawn took the Fool and made it card 0 before the Magician. But if you look at Geo Miebes, the Russian influence, the mentor or author who influenced Valentin Tomberg and these other guys on the continent, they place often the Fool before the World, right toward the end of the sequence.
Waite published his own answer in the Manual of Cartomancy, back page 144, back in 1909. The answer, they could be grouped, for example, about the central figure, which is that of the quorant. But that would involve a symbolism belonging to a higher grade of the whole experiment. Yes, it's quite simple. The Fool, of course, belongs in the middle. But that's assuming he doesn't move. Does he or does he not move? That's the whole point of Williams's Greater Trumps. Does everything come to him? Does he stay where he is at the center? And do we locate the center accordingly? Or does he make his knights move? Or does his alter ego, the Knight of Wands, make the move? We have quite a bit of information on this. The Yeats is always talking about the dance of his 4 royal persons. Does everybody here know Yeats is a vision, or how many do not? Some do not know Yeats is a vision. Well, Yeats parted with Waite for various reasons around 1912 to 13, though he wrote back to him for aid on several occasions. And I have one report, as yet unconfirmed, that Waite came down to see Yeats at Oxford in the early 1920s, though Bob Gilbert has found no corroboration at his end of the line on this. If it turns out to be true, it's going to be very significant indeed. Everybody has been assuming all of these years that Yeats went along with Falcon's magical order, whereas Waite went off on a Christian mystical order. Everyone is wrong. Yeats did not definitely attach himself to Falcon till after 1913. And in fact, attaching is a very loose word. He had the gravest reservations about Falcon. And on the other hand, Waite did not give up magic in 1901 or 1903. There is a magical ritual at the very center of the Waite-Smith, and as I claim, the Waite-Smith-Yeats pack. Let's take this a little farther now, and
The Waite-Smith-Yeats pack. This is where that comes from. Now, yeah, I mean, he might be overplaying how much Yeats had reservations about Falcon. But what we do know is, yeah, eventually Yeats was quite a big fan of what Falcon did, because he even went through the 6-5 and maybe even the 7-4 versions of the rituals that Falcon created, and wrote one of his greatest poems, or what some would call one of his greatest poems, and bit of writing based on his experience in the 6-5 initiation. And we'll jump back through some of these comments since there's so many. I'm not sure what the chicken and the egg debate is here referring to, but yeah. So Mather's never made a deck, so I'm not sure what you mean by Wang's GD as a reproduction of Mather's deck, because Mather's never made a deck. You might be referring, I assume, I'm going to guess you're referring to the tarot cards used in the initiations, in which case the Wang deck isn't based on those either. That's why Frater Yeckett is putting out finally a deck that is based on those. Yes, Falcon, along with a bunch of them. I mean, all the magically inclined people created the Stella Matutina. It's not called a lodge. In the Golden Dawn, we don't call them lodges. We call them temples or orders. The orders have temples, not lodges. That's an OTO and Freemason thing, not a Golden Dawn thing. Yeah, that's why I'm here to educate. The order where the fool should be. Oh, right. I mean, the fool sort of represents sometimes the querent, the questioner, and sometimes it's just the fool. I don't know what red and black means, but go back up to questions. Here's Null, who says, do you believe that there was a universal brotherhood of initiation like the occult authors write in the Greeks? A universal, no, there's groups in time and space. There's different groups and different things in time and space. And even like things like the Eleusinian mysteries weren't a singular thing. They changed drastically over time, even being brought over to Spain and practiced there, as we've found archaeological evidence of. So yeah, the idea that there's one secret brotherhood behind stuff is just completely nonsense, silly wishful thinking or bad history. We have so many details. Again, a lot of this sort of perennialist stuff gets facilitated only by ignoring everything that we've learned and just ignoring it. I mean, that's why so many people think that North American buildings were built by a previous civilization, because we don't have the technology to build them anymore. No, they were falling down. So we learned how to make things cheaper out of cement and rebar. That's why buildings aren't made out of stone mostly anymore. And street levels were raised. That's why doors and windows look like they're partially underground. But again, if you ignore all the historical data, then you might think, oh, how could we couldn't have made these? They already existed here. Null, who says Manly, Hall, and Pappas, among others, seem to have pushed this view of history. Yeah, they weren't historians. They weren't historians. They were classic esotericists out to push their vision of history. And it's a very beautiful and magical vision sometimes, but not necessarily historical. Lord of Ness, what's the garment worn by the Hegemon in the Golden Dawn? The white one with a red cross on the shoulder. What's the garment? I mean, either it's a part of their robe or their cloak. I think it's better when it's part of their cloak, personally. Yeah, the white cloak of the Hegemon is their garment. Yeah, with a red cross on the breast. Because the Hegemon represents the higher self of the candidate. It's carries the mitre-headed scepter, which, as we're told in the Not initiation, represents religion to guide and regulate life. Yeah. Brian says, oh yeah, Galatians are what most call Anatolian Celts, but I've heard a few lectures of the branch that went through northern. Yeah, they went all over. The Celts went all over. That's something we know very much for sure. According to Hogan, Lord of Ness says, the Knights Templar continued to operate in secret and created Freemasonry. Yeah, I mean, that's not real history, though. It's not real history. That's pseudo-history. It's a fun story. And Hogan himself admits that he knows it's not true factually. Yeah, and you can watch his interview with A.J. Gentile in response to that admittance that he made when A.J. made that show on the Y-Files about Hogan and the Knights Templars. He concluded by, showing a letter that an exchange he had with Hogan, where Hogan admitted that, yeah, these things aren't historically true, but he likes them anyway, so he tells the story. AJ then responded, well, it's fine to tell a story, but maybe you shouldn't tell people something's historically true when you know it's not. And then to take things further, they had a big sit down for many, many hours and go into all the details. And that's probably a good place where you can see what we know historically to be the case and what is questionable or debunked played out over several hour podcasts between AJ Gentile and Timothy Hogan. So go check that out if you want to know more about that stuff. Yeah. Lord of Ness says, for me, the evidence is what the initiates say directly, and Timothy is a current master. Academia says, well, then, I mean, sure, that's just still not factual. I mean, you can go with, that's the point. It's religion, spirituality. You can, it doesn't have to be historically factual to be real and a good faith. I mean, Christianity isn't based on historical facts so much, in case you didn't notice. And if you want to claim then things like things we know aren't true about the Masons or Rosicrucians or Knights Templars true when it's not, again, that's a spiritual history. And we need to distinguish between spiritual history. If you just take everything someone says, like you're saying, that's the weird thing is to say that you would ignore what scholars actually have researched and believe what someone says just because they're an initiate of something directly. I mean, that's going to set yourself, you're putting yourself in someone's power quite a bit there. If you meet some initiate and just because they're an initiate of something, start taking their word as gospel for everything they say, even when it's contradicted by the facts of history or the facts of nature, you might be at risk of putting yourself in someone's power there a little bit too much. But again, you do you, and I wish you the best on your path. Yes, it does in the Golden Dawn. The Fool card represents the path from Kether to Hawkma. If we go by what Academia says, the pyramids were built using solid bronze knives, slave labor ropes, which could. Academia is divided on the way the pyramids were constructed. That's the thing. Academia doesn't, this idea that academia says something is not how academia works, not how scholarship works. People have theories and evidence and hypotheses, and then those are debated, and then new evidence is gathered based on research, based on those discoveries, and then we keep rolling forward and learning more things. If you want to ignore all the things we learn, you can do that. No one cares as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can tell. Right, that's what you felt. One of the examples Pappus gave of this was the Alexander the Great meeting Hebrew high priest and worshiping the Holy of Holies, which is, I mean, obviously that's probably completely made up. Stuff like that usually is. There was a Mithric temple at Hadrian's Wall. Yeah. Their Mithraism is widespread and reaching. The White Cross goes directly to temple symbol. Oh. Yeah, we sometimes use the Templar cross actually in the Golden Dawn. The Hierophant can actually change the design of the cross, but the six-armed cross worn by the Hegemon, the six-equal arm cross, is not the Templar cross that the Golden Dawn uses. A Hierophant can wear the Templar cross on their mantle if they want to. There's several cross options given to the Hierophant to wear in the Hall of the Neophyte. But just because something in today references, say, the Templars, that doesn't mean that there's a direct connection between the Templars and that thing, other than what we're saying it is. It's a fabrication that we're creating for spiritual reasons, usually, to say, look, there's a spiritual influence here. We're drawing a spiritual connector between these two things, and that's fine. That's how religion and spirituality work. But when we can mix that up with historical facts, you erode your own brain. You just you denigrate and disrespect your own intellectual capacity. Yeah, Mithras is interesting. I think Peter Mark Adams has a new book on a Mithras that would be really interesting to read. Awesome. Let's get through this.
Try to explain myself. We have been told since GD times, and this much only of the original symbolism was kept. Each one of the court cards corresponds to one of the trumps major. Say, King of Wands corresponds obviously to Leo, the lion, and weight makes a big thing. It corresponds to the symbol of the lion. And Queen of Cups corresponds to the chariot. Carrying this a little further, Knight of Swords corresponds to the lovers. And Waite goes right along with this and tells us that he is a romantic hero of prototypical chivalry. And the Queen of Cups, she has visions and she dreams, and her activity is fed by dreams. At number 4, we have the Page of Pentacles, who corresponds with the world. The Page of Pentacles is the earth of earth on the last tablet. By the way, these 4 cards are run at full length in the Waite article of December 1909. King of Wands, Queen of Cups, Knight of Swords, Page of Pentacles. The 4 royal persons who dance their dance in the sands, as O'Neill saw those Sufis dancing on Cyprus back in the 70s and 80s. Long before those dancers whom his friend G.R.S. Mead wrote about in a book called Orpheus, published in 1895, which I suggest Yeats was reading simultaneously with his reading of O'Neill's Night of the Gods.
Yo, Lord of Ness, you say we are all ignorant about something, or do you know everything? What a thing to say, because I've mentioned multiple times so far on this stream where my knowledge has its limits. So that's me saying, look, I don't know more than this about the tarot history or about this or that other thing, right? So just to accuse me of claiming to know everything because I do know some things is not good faith, right? Like, you can see that, right? Like, again, I'm one of the minority in the culture, in this world that is eager to admit the limitations of their knowledge and where the limitations of all knowledge are in the human sphere. I have no problem saying I don't know more than this, or people don't know more than this. We don't really know how the pyramids were made. Academia is quite clear about that. I mean, what we have is competing arguments, and so there's no certitude, and that's why the research and the archaeology continues. That's why it continues. But yeah, the things I do know are things I do know, and things I don't know are things I don't know. So I definitely don't know everything, and I think you know that. Yeah. We all do. That's how learning works. That's how all learning works, is we draw from many teachers. Yeah, and that's why it's a good idea not to glorify one person as knowing all truth or doctrine. That goes without saying, really.
Probably long before Waite had read them. These figures do their dance. Yeats describes in his book of Vision, in which he comes up with his own systems later, and he draws a picture of a great wheel, and on that wheel intersect, the 4 suits of the tarot. But there is not one word about tarot in the book. However, in Yeats's private scripts, one does...
Okay, look, I didn't say you're intellectually degrading yourself because you're not interested in academia. I'm saying if you disregard facts and claim that things that aren't facts are facts, that just damages your own intellectual integrity. If you know something's not true historically, but you say it's true anyway because you want it to be true, that's where I think there's a problem. I think that's a problem of intellectual integrity. So, the place that changes, actually, someone commented about that up above. This is exactly a demonstration of where that changes, and this is why I don't have a problem with Timothy Hogan having a spiritual history of the Knights Templars and his lineage in them. I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think anyone should, especially since he's admitted that he knows it's not historically factual. So Brian says spirituality and history should walk together, not be divided. The events in history are often catalyzed by spiritual thought, belief, good or bad. Right. So the reason spirituality and history can't walk together is because they're making different kinds of claims. History makes fact claims, and spirituality makes a completely different kind of claim. It's not trying to claim. Spirituality is not based on historical facts. It's based on doctrinal truths or revealed wisdom, and those are completely different categorical sets of knowledge. The way we suss them out, the way we validate them, are completely different. Yeah, well, Yeah, exactly, Satori. I mean, there's competing. Yeah, the idea that scholars are there to tell you the truth is to misunderstand what scholarship is fundamentally. Religion, again, if you're saying religion's corrupting facts, then you're taking a very hostile position against someone like Timothy Hogan. You're saying that his tradition then is based off a corruption of history, whereas I don't see it that way. I think Timothy Hogan and his Knights Templar movement is a spiritual rebirth of the ideals of the Templars, and that's what that is. And it's not the corrupting of history facts, it's just the embellishment and spiritual anagogical interpretation of history for the purpose of spiritual fulfillment in the modern day. And that is what spirituality is. That's a beautiful thing. All right. You think, no, you see, this is your mistake. If you say the thing is you take what academia says as the truth or historical fact, I would take that absolute truth with a grain of salt. No one, that's the opposite of what's being said here. It's the opposite of what's being said here. It's the opposite of what I'm saying. Just to be clear. All right. Let's get through this and we'll do all the comments at the end and have a lot of fun, because I still have another hour to kill, so I can hang out for a little bit longer than I necessarily thought before I have to go see my old buddies from high school who are all magicians and great guys, and we're going to play a fairy tale RPG game together and shoot the breeze.
That's fine.
Embellishment is a great word, isn't it, Nameless One? Yes, it is. It really is. And again, what do you think we do in Christianity or Judaism or any of these things? I mean, we embellish. I mean, this is anagogical interpretation is what it is. Not just of text, but as history as text. Reading history as text is a very important method of understanding history, alongside historicism, historiography, and all these different methodologies. I'll see if I can have my buddy John on sometime to walk through some of this stuff, because he did his MA in medieval studies, and he has a lot of fun facts. And whenever I get too deep down into my woo-woo rabbit hole, sometimes I'll be like the Rashad structure and the pyramids and the Palladians, and he gives me a bit of a reality check when I'm like, they're not digging underground because they'll find the truth. I love that stuff. I do love that stuff, but I also love my mind and not sacrificing it on the altar of woo. As much as I love the New Age and was raised in it, and it's my world, I also do love testing that knowledge and giving my brain, sharpening my brain in the fires of the, where the blacksmith hits the thing. Anagogical is a great word.
Traveling through Southern California, perhaps appropriately, in 1920, he specifically refers to himself as the King of Wands and his wife as the Queen of Cups. They're in fact the two first dancers of the four royal persons who make up the dance. This is not part of any other tradition except the Waite tradition. Let's carry it a little bit further. Take the Queen of Cups. She's a very good one indeed, I think, because she is on top of the chariot. And Yeats writes about that in his poem, The Circus Animals' Desertions. Lion and woman, the birdie's chariot, the whole...
Yeah, I know. I wanted to do this review in a more smooth stream so I could edit out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here's a really good example of what we're talking about, of what I'm talking about, of this side theme. I love that there's a side thing going on to the chat for all my multitaskers out there. It's cool. Here's a good example of the danger of taking modern embellishments, reinterpretations of a tradition, over historical facts of a tradition. Here's a really good example. You all know that I'm a big fan of the latest and greatest translation of Dr. Litwa's Hermetica, which I think the last two copies just sold. But if not, go to Fount Unlimited and you might get one of the last limited editions with this beautiful artwork by Jose Sabogal. And this is the real Hermetica, translated, retranslated, reordered. But the Hermetica is a real thing. In modern times, the Kybalion is also a real thing. A lot of people want to say it's Hermetic. And if you really want to say it's Hermetic, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. It shouldn't bother anyone. However, if you take the principles in the Kybalion as Hermetic principles, what you lose by placing them over and against the actual historical Hermetica is Hermetic belief, is Hermetic spirituality. Because there's contradictory principles in the Kybalion's Hermetic principles that contradict core tenets of the actual Hermetica. If you were to take the Kybalion over against the historical data, you lose some of those beliefs. You lose some of those ideas because they're contradicted. And therefore, you end up sacrificing the actual Hermetic texts and spirituality to a fabrication of neo-Hermetic ideas from Atkinson and his New Thought movement, which again, I have a first edition Kybalion. I cherish it. I even made my buddy who gave it to me in 97 at the Bodhi Tree in LA write his name and inscribe it to me so that I could never sell it. And I've had offers up to 10K for that book. Fortunately, it's inscribed to me, so I have to keep it and probably bury it with me or something like that. Leave it to my kids so they can buy a house. I don't know. But it's a fun text, and it really did a lot for me as a 16-year-old. It meant a lot as a 16-year-old. But then when I studied the actual Hermetica, I'm like, oh, well, these ideas contradict the Hermetica. So what am I going to invest my time in? That's something you have to answer for yourself. You can then choose the Kybalion over the Hermetica, or you can choose the Hermetica over the Kybalion. But the two things do not work together very well because of their contradictory beliefs. So I gave that as an example of how modern constructions of spirituality and belief and religion can suffer when taken over historical data. And I think that's even true for traditions like Christianity and Judaism and paganism. I mean, how many people these days complain that by accepting Wicca as a form of paganism, you end up losing some actual beliefs that witches allegedly had? That would be another way of seeing that trade-off happen. Anyway, back to the show.
A whole crowd of tarot characters come on here in a poem called The Circus Animals' Desertion. My circus animals were all on show. Come now, Yates, they weren't on show. You've never mentioned the tarot but once in your life. Nevertheless, he says they were all on show. And one finds repeatedly when one is working with the drafts, yes, they were there all along. And it was based upon the tarot geometrical arrangement. First, as a chessboard. You see how it goes now. Magician to chariot makes up the top line and represents the top world. The 8th card, whether it be justice or strength, opens the 2nd world, moves to 14 temperance. The 3rd world is, of course, the 15th card to the 21st. You put the Fool crossing the center. If you put the Fool with his red feather across justice, you have the soul being weighed in the balance. He, in fact, becomes the Egyptian Mot. When Waite says he is the Mot, he goes further and says he is the mate. He quite knows the difference between a Mot, which in French meant a dead man, or dumbhead if you prefer with the Fool, and a mate. He is placed in the center, and he is crossed by justice on the scale.
So these are the original color plates.
What card follows at this point? Please visualize the difference. The King of Wands, the leader of the dance, would previously have been in the center. He now gets moved to the 8th position, and you switch with the Queen of Swords, who now gets in the center. The Fool loses his head. When Waite thanked Pamela Colman Smith for the several striking executions she had contributed to his pack, he meant exactly that. 20 years later, when he does his reminiscences, he still pointed out that the public hasn't adequately appreciated Pamela Colman Smith's striking work. To go further in this, if you are unsatisfied as this being the pun, he thanks Charles Leland, the author of Aradia, the Gospel of the Witches, for his striking researches. If you check Leland's reference, or Waite's reference to Leland, you'll find it's a batch of druids with scythes waving severed heads around the page of the 1620 book on which they are represented. People have been thrown off because they do not realize that the book is about, that the pack is about severed heads. It is. They're all over the place. That pentacle, the Eight of Pentacles. You may know him, the ingenious mind turned to cunning and intrigue, the artist in stone at his work. It turns out to be, and he is displaying trophies. Look, these puns go on forever, and I've only got about 3 minutes anymore. The trophies happen to be those of Trophonius. It's all in O'Neill, and also in Pausanias, a book which Yates as well as Waite certainly had in their libraries.
Yeah, I agree that it would be great if they had filmed these with video cameras, but back in 87, that would have been like Super 8, or like my dad has all these films of me and my sister in the 80s that he won't give us, of course, because he never wanted us to be able to enjoy them, and now she's dead, so nice guy. But yeah, there are these great camera rolls of us. One of them just has my name on it, and then it says eats, rake, kicks, ball. And sure enough, it's a video without sound of me in the backyard in my little winter coat walking around, and then I pick up a plastic rake and start gnawing on it as a 2-year-old, and then I kick a ball, and that's the whole clip. I wish I could get that from my dad, but he's a nasty piece of work. Actually, remind me of Hannah Hanna and Gardner. You guys are just having fun and being silly. I love it.
Trophonius was one of the architects of Delphi, and they later decided they'd break into the treasure room and remove the materials. Unfortunately, Trophonius was stuck on the way out, and it was necessary to amputate his head. The ingenious mind
Fortunately, the Hermetica is now, this beautiful soft cover exists that you can get on Amazon for a very reasonable price, and so that's great. Oh, and there are shops that still have copies of the Hermetica. If you really want one, especially if you want one for personal keeping, not to resell it at the end of the year for $1,000, you can still get them. They might have sold out most places that got them in, but go check Dark Star, go check all the places. You will probably be able to find a place that hasn't sold out their copies because stores ordered them, and you can still find them there. Otherwise, the paperback is absolutely gorgeous, and even Amazon POD hardcovers can be okay. Or you can get the paperback and then just get a binder to bind it for they'll do a leather binding for you probably for less than $200 if you really want a super sexy version of Dr. Litwa's Hermetica. Just get a paperback one, take it to a beautiful bookbinder. It'll be great. It'll be great. I was going to do that with the old edition of his Hermetica one, and I kept talking about it so much. I think that's one of the things that led Gabriel and Anathema to be interested in, like, hey, we should do that so that people aren't doing it themselves, and we can, make a nice. Gabriel told me that yeah, he was thinking about it from the get-go, and I was literally doing ritual work while I did. So I recorded the Audible audiobook. Yeah, the audiobook is amazing. I recorded it. It took me a long time, many hours of work to do the Audible audiobook of Hermetica 1, and it's really nice. Check that out. Very proud of that. And it is, of course, that's why Dr. Litwa actually dedicated this book to me and put my name in the front cover, which is really kind of the honor of a lifetime. I was like, why'd you do that, you bastard? And he's like, I wanted to make you immortal. I was like, what a guy. What a guy. Yeah, you can still probably find a Hermetica one if you're willing to do the legwork and find a shop that hasn't sold its copy, because not everyone knows how valuable they are going to be. No, they would get their asses sued, that's for sure. I mean, there'll probably be a second edition at some point. I know Gabriel is really finicky about watering down limited edition runs, but the 500 book run was kind of a mistake. He just didn't realize how popular the Hermetica was, which is hilarious because it's actually a mainstream book, and also it shows that you really haven't paid attention to how popular the Kybalion is, and that you're putting out a book that could actually efface it in popularity. Because in the back of this, there's some essays that Dr. Litwa wrote, including one on the 16 Hermetic principles. So you can just read, maybe at the end, if we have time, if we get through this without too many more questions, though, keep them rolling in for the, just because. At the end, we might read through just what the 16 principles are. And you tell me if you hear any conflicts between them and the New Thought principles Atkinson put forth in the Kybalion. Yeah, 16 Hermetic principles are what there are in the Hermetica, the actual Hermetica, not the New Thought Kybalion by Atkinson.
Cutting an intrigue,
We'll do it at the end.
its trophies. Yes, those parallelograms. They show up again, by the way, in Yeats' late dance plays. In The Death of Cuchulainn, Emma also dances with a severed head, which is in fact a parallelogram. And Yeats very specifically specified.
Fun fact, the play The Death of Cuchulainn, the Irish mythical hero, is the play that Yeats wrote last in his life, a part of this series of Cuchulainn's plays, the Cuchulainn cycle. And Cuchulainn means hound of Cullen. And he finished it on his deathbed while he was dying in France. He finished The Death of Cuchulainn while he was passing from this world with Cuchulainn by his side, fighting the indomitable waves.
That's what he wants in this respect. One last bit. I'll now throw in a Bacon Shakespeare claim. I can quickly get this for 2 minutes. And I was back to the Queen of Wands. Yeats's book is called A Vision. All right, the Queen of Cups sees visions and has her dreams. All right, anybody can see visions and have dreams. There's a little bit more. She feeds upon them. And does anybody remember that great, beautiful, big ciborium that gets illustrated at the front of the book? That's what she's looking into if you check your Queen of Cups. The author of A Vision is in fact looking into the Holy Grail. And to carry this a little further, let's go back to Waite now. He describes the remarkable experiences he had with psychic Pamela Colman Smith and how, in fact, he had to be careful, but she was being spoon-fed. Many years later, Jesse Weston also brought out a book called From Ritual to Romance, which served as the basis for Eliot's The Wasteland, and his interpretation, the Waite-Smith Tarot Pack. Waite complains bitterly she was spoon-fed. The only person who could have spooned, and he further adds that the person who gave her the information was W.B. Yeats. The only person, in fact, the word spoon-fed is unusual. It's used twice in all of the Waite canon. It refers specifically to the Queen and her cup, from which one feeds. It's a ciborium, but has a residue of the intinctured host. I could go on all day about tinctures, but I think you've got the idea already, and we shall close with one last bit, if my claim has been too recondite. Yes, there has to be a cipher. Waite was great on ciphers, and after all, the Fool is a ciphered card. He says that it should scarcely be necessary to enumerate them. This is his passage immediately following the Grail section. For they must be almost commonly familiar. But as it is precarious to assume anything, and as there are also other reasons, I will tabulate them briefly as follows. If you'd care to run a 23-letter anagram, I will tabulate them briefly, reads William Butler Yeats Thief. And thief is in order after you remove the William Butler Yeats. If you want to call that coincidence, I think one's carrying it a long way. Indeed. He's, of course, the magician, who's quite a good thief indeed.
I fucked up, didn't I? I'm sorry, guys. Oof. Amateur hour, hey? Sorry about that. Mea culpa. What was I saying? All right. Here was the comment. Levy makes good arguments for ceding ground to known facts and evidence as the better way to parse the magical path. Seems like a good way to go about it. Yes, if I had accepted the fact that the Kybalion I was given in 97, the beautiful first edition over there on my shelf, was the Hermetic truth, then I would have rejected the actual Hermetica when encountering its contradictory claims. And then I would be, missing out on actual Hermetic spirituality in place of 20th century New Thought, which is a choice you can make. But I'm glad I didn't make that choice. I'm glad that I'm open to the new discoveries of history. If we're open to the new discoveries of history, in my opinion, you'll end up enriching your tradition and your practice rather than eroding it. That's just my opinion on that. Brian says at a certain point, it's like heliocentrism and geocentrism, history and spirituality all boils down to the point of perspective from the earth. The sun does revolve around us. But when you zoom out, yeah, exactly. And spirituality and history have different sets of criteria. 7 Hermetic principles do with the tarot too. I mean, you can correspond anything to anything. You can tell me, this is what I learned in seminary, by the end of seminary, I realized that anyone who wanted could tell me, give me a list of their theology, could outline their religion for me, tell me everything they want to believe, whatever it is, and I could create evidence and prove it using the Bible. You can create evidence for anything you want to believe. So that brings you to the question of what criteria should we use for our beliefs, and what's also the ethical implications of our birth. That's why ethics has far more should have more determination on what we believe than facts and history when it comes to spirituality. Because how does that play out? Like, oh, this person said that all people like this in the past should be stoned. Well, okay, we don't have to continue that idea. They might have thought that was a good idea at the time, but now we can go, what if we don't stone them and we can just, not do that. Right. 16 Hermetic principles are what's in the actual Hermetica, and Dr. Litwa has outlined them in his new Hermetica 1 book, which you can get on Amazon today, and you should. Okay, what else we got here? I mean, yeah, if you want to, the obvious thing with 7 Hermetic principles, which are not Hermetic, would be to align them with the 7 planets. But again, it would be clunky because the principles are designed to define planetary action rather than correspond to them. If you look at the Hermetic, the Kybalion. Yeah, G.R.S. Mead is not a good source of history. Cuchulainn, hound of the smith or dog breeder. Siddhanta. The fatal blow, aka I love that you know the Celtic myths as well as I do, brother. Sorry about the mute, folks. Sorry about the unmuting myself, not muting myself. Puppies. Cullen is a person, and the Cu is the hound. Yeah, I know. I muted myself. Lord of Ness says, what I've observed is that many Golden Dawn initiates face financial difficulties. This suggests that elementary planetary magic not produced. So because you have anecdotal evidence of certain people that you know not doing well financially, and often, let's keep in mind, occultists often sacrifice having successful careers so they can be nerdy occultists and meditate all day long and do rituals. So, do you blame the ascetic in his cave writing the words of God for not owning a mansion and a swimming pool when he made that choice? Yeah, our magic works perfectly fine, and people make their own choices in life. And then there's just sometimes hardship. I have autoimmune disease that kept me out of many, many career paths, for example. Yeah, I did repeat from the beginning. I went back to the beginning and went over it. Levi, the greatest of all time? I don't think so. I think Levi was okay, but I think we have much better. The glorification of occultists from 100, 200, 500, or 2,000 years ago, I think, is a big mistake. We've come a long way, baby. We've got a lot better stuff these days than they had back then. They'd be jealous of us. Mark my word. They may have been known more languages and been better educated in some ways, but they knew less. They didn't understand what we know about how the universe works would flabbergast them. We'd seem like super beings compared to someone from even 100 years ago by just talking about basic science, grade 9 science classes. What we learned in that would blow their minds. I did not mean to blow your mind. Lord of Ness depends on how you measure success. Yeah, Groundhog Day. Good example. Great movie. I like both and think they're both valid. And I mean, yeah, validity is whatever you want it to be. Well, the Golden Dawn is not an order of pure spiritual transcendence. That's a big mistake. I mean, we have a heavy focus on spirit conjuration, as well as theurgy, and many sorcerous practices as they be defined today, tons of witchcraft and all that stuff. People just have a very limited, narrow understanding of the Golden Dawn because they're not in it. But if you were to reduce it to spiritual transcendence, I mean, again, it's not the case because it's too embodied. We're too much of an embodied, immanental practice to be transcendental. That's more Maharishi and TM and other Eastern practices that are all about transcendence. The Golden Dawn is not about transcendence. It's about spiritual rebirth and sanctification of the body, to be a throne for the divine to be seated in matter with us, for us to die and be reborn as Osiris, as spirit clothed in flesh, not as spirit escaping flesh. That's more Gnosticism, which is the Golden Dawn's Hermetic, which is body positive. Gnosticisms are often body negative. The body and material is evil. But the Hermetic path is, no, the body and nature, cosmos are good, are suffused with God's being that makes them good. Gorgop says Zaleski made the same argument with the color scale, saying the previous order never actually checked if the colors were accurate. Yeah, that's his argument. I take the same stance as most modern Golden Dawn people on the colors. Amina, my fellow anthroposophist, sehr freut, wie geht's dir? What was the comment the speaker mentioned about Yeats and Parsifal Arthurian myth? Also the comment about the Queen of Cups looking into the holy. Well, you can go look at this lecture online. Just look at Roger Parisious on Adam McLean's channel, and you'll find this lecture there. Or you can scroll back a bit. But yeah, the idea is that the Yeats proposed that it come out of the Welsh Grail mysteries rather than the German Wolfram von Eschenbach Parsifal story, which I love. I still love that. I'm not sure if there is a Welsh retelling that's superior. Yeah, some things are a good idea for the time and then are abandoned later on. Many things make sense in older times that don't make sense in modern post-industrial technological civilization. You miss prose like Levy's? Well, have you read that in the French? Because he wrote in French. He didn't write in English. So you might be missing A.E. Waite's archaic English translation, perhaps. I don't know. You tell me. I haven't read the new John Michael Greer translation of the French Eau Magie, Rituel et Dogma de la Eau Magie, but I will read it at some point. Grimoire TV. Hey, cool channel name. I should check that out. 200 years from now, they'll be writing about us with awe. I mean, not. I think Gen Alpha will and already are. Well, once they learn to write, will be writing. As soon as they learn to write, they'll be writing about us with awe. Because they're so cooked. It's really sad. Brothers of Light. Okay, pretend like I'm 150 years ago and give me a couple bullet points about what's better. What in regards to what? What's better in regards to what? Definitely, we need to know. We need new great books. We have so many great books coming out all the time. I was just holding one up. There's so much. This is the golden age of occultism and occult publishing. We are in it right now. It's happening. Brian says, right, the Irish are sacred because, yep, Grandar Bible pits. No. I mean, if you look at how Noah is written in Hebrew, you would change your mind on that, perhaps. Life being, but yeah, that's some good anagogical theosophy you've just given us. It's interesting. The internet would destroy John Dee's world. We blinded them with science. Lord of Ness again. So Golden Dawn magic is not effective. Yes, it is. What are you doing? What are you talking about? Do you think Golden Dawn magic is not effective for changing mundane situations? What a silly thing to say. Golden Dawn magic isn't different than other magic. Magic's magic. It's all magic. It is magic focused on spiritual understanding, which is probably that's no. You're just because I say it does this one thing, does it? I already said it does covers the whole terrain. There's no practice of magic that was not done in the Golden Dawn. And for you to keep saying that because they also did this one thing, this theurgy, that's what it is. Their theurgy isn't even just one thing. There's different forms of theurgy. And the Golden Dawn practices multiple forms of theurgy. So stop trying to be reductive and reduce the Golden Dawn to what you want it to be. Just because you met people in the Golden Dawn. I'm also people in the Golden Dawn, as someone who puts on events, check out what I've got coming up. The Golden Dawn people are the ones who usually can afford to go to events. It's the OTO and Thelemites that usually can't afford to go to events, or like the pagans. Pagans often do pretty well because they've got Etsy and like they know how to make money and stuff. But Golden Dawners, our system is so expensive to practice. If you really go whole hog with it and to get all the books and tools and build a temple, like it's so expensive. Most Golden Dawn people are, I'd say Golden Dawners are among the higher in the socioeconomics scale. But many also just, you know, that's not their path in life. Not everyone, not everyone's going to succeed in the mundane world, and not everyone wants to, right? Not everyone wants to. Judging people by that metric is ridiculous. Yeah, I agree. Even as untranslated, yeah, Levi is great. Levi is wonderful. I love Levi. Billy Wolfifer says, in 200 years, the GD rituals will be rock solid. They were written to transcend time. I mean, yeah, maybe. I think the Golden Dawn could be, will, you know, I think Golden Dawn trained magicians. Well, they're already, Nick Farrell created his own order and changed it. So, you know, there's new orders that come to life. Martinism is a thing. I know temples that are run by Golden Dawn adepts who are also Martinist adepts who are fusing the two things together in a really very real way, and then bringing a bunch of Gnostic Christianity into it as well. Like people are doing all kinds of different stuff. Not everyone's a sort of a traditionalist Golden Dawn type like me. A lot of people just take what they want and fuse it with other things and see how it works. And that's sort of that's all right. Brian says myths imply you choose which ways you go in, then perpetual mulligans. Okay, yeah, interesting. Angelo, preaching. Sure, all right. I mean, you're the one trying to reduce my tradition to one little thing. Like, what a thing to do. What a thing to do. The way that magic works is through spirits primarily. And the Golden Dawn, therefore, focuses on conjuration almost more than anything else. That's why Mathers published the Greater Key of Solomon the same year he started the Golden Dawn. It's why he then later on translated the Abramelin. He wanted his adepts to engage with it. It's why he created an entire evocation formula through the Z-Docs, so that magicians could summon spirits to physical appearance, so they could then get things done for you in the material world. That's what magic is for, very largely. Is there also theurgy and spiritual enlightenment and development? Of course. But magic is by conjuring spirits, for the most part. You also are a spirit. You have your nous, your holy daimon, which gives you magical leverage. But, you know, if you really want to get something done, you also want to leverage other spirits, guides, angels, all these other beings. And that's what we do in the Golden Dawn. That's the whole basis of the system. Brian says, oh, that's the Gabal Aaron. Yeah, the Book of Invasions says about no. Yeah, well, because all the Celtic texts are written by Christians. All the Celtic texts, the ancient Celtic texts of the late Middle Ages or early Middle Ages are written by Christians to show the people of the land and history that the Irish myths all connect to the Christian story. So there was an agenda, you can say, going on for sure. So we don't actually have any historical evidence of what actual Irish myths looked like before Christendom, sadly, to my utter sadness and woe. Brothers of Light 777 says, no, I mean, if it was from 150 years ago, occultists, then what would they be so floored by us knowing now that they didn't know back then? All of science, all of everything, they would be floored by everything we learn in grade school and high school for the most part, because we know more about everything that they knew back then. Everything they knew back then, we know more about all that stuff today. And if you're not aware of that, well, I have some good news for you. You got a lot of really cool learning available to you. We just know a lot more than, and again, you might not know that, but like, we do know a lot of stuff. Humans know a lot of stuff, and we know more than we can even begin to work on. Like back then, they had such limited, we know Egyptian mythology now. We know the Egyptian language now. They couldn't read Egyptian. E.A. Wallace Budge's Egyptian is all fucked up. It's almost garbage. So all of the Egyptology they knew back then was nonsense compared to today. So there's an example of a major breakthrough that we've had. Yeah. Master the elements before you command the spirits. I mean, that's the Golden Dawn approach. Yeah. You with that Scottish Gaelic. Haha, well, lucky me, I'm about to go back to school. Yeah, good. School's good. All right. All of Budge's understanding of Egyptian was completely, it's unusable today. It's unusable. Budge's work is unusable by modern Egyptologists. It was so off. But it was fun at the time. They had fun with it. But he didn't understand the language. That's very well known. I think we'd be very shocked and scared to see what the high priests of Egypt would do if they were around today. I mean, these are people who thought the brain was in the heart, that our thinking came from our heart. And it's a beautiful spiritual idea. However, you wouldn't want someone trained in that biological belief system to do surgery on you, right? Yeah. Good. All right. I'll read you the 16 Hermetic principles. Not the full commentaries on them and analysis, but just the titles of them. So here's the 16 actual Hermetic principles. Dr. Litwa says, Hermetic thought is impossible to systematize, but Hermetic spirituality can at least be summarized. In what follows, I endeavor to boil down my understanding of Hermetic spirituality under 16 headings. 1. All religions are insufficient. There is always a source above God or gods. And he says, like, spirituality is a matter of deep personal experience, and this experience is had by individuals. One's ultimate commitment is not to any one person or institution. The Hermetic commitment is to truth as it is found in nature and in the self. I won't say more because you should get the book. 2, the source is beyond human cognition, but can be described as light and life. So in the Kybalion, you'll notice they say the all is mind. That's not a Hermetic idea. That is a new thought idea from the 20th century, that all is nous. In Hermetica, nous is below 2 other things. So the highest is, the source is life and light in Hermetica. And you see that very clearly in the Golden Dawn ceremonies and rituals. 3, humanity is the divine child of the source. Real humanity contains both genders and cannot die. 4, deathlessness is realized through gnosis, namely knowledge of what humanity really is, which is daimones, spirits. We are spirits in matter, and when we die, we either rejoin the matrix of nature, or we are initiated on the way of Hermes, and our soul unites with our nous, and that nous is a daimon. It's our holy demon, our holy spirit. And we then rise up, gaining our tunic of fire, sort of like a body of light kind of idea. And we rise up to be like the star gods and angels, but better, because we were dying gods before that. So we're double gods, dying gods who become like the star gods. None of that you see in the Kybalion, right? None of that. And that's a pretty major theology. or anagogical view of nature. 5, the world, nature, is a second God, a child of God. 6, science and spirituality are sisters. Hermes Thrice Great was viewed as an ancient spiritual guide, but was also known as a scientist, an inventor, and a sage, revealing all sorts of wisdom. In Hermetic thought, there is no tension between science and spirituality, or theology and philosophy. They are one. 7, humanity enters the mortal body by intercourse with nature. As a consequence, sex and sexuality is good. I even had someone in our Hermetica study course with Dr. Litwa that you can still join. It's happening right now. And the Monday sessions are recorded so you can catch up on what you've missed. But I had someone saying how evil it is to have children and to want our race to continue itself based on the Hermetica. And I was like, that's not Hermetica, man. That's like Sethian Gnosticism or something like that. Like the Hermetica is pro-natalist, extremely pro-natalist. In fact, there's part of it that Dr. Litwa wasn't sure should be in the text, so he moved it to a footnote, but he left it in there because in that part of the Hermetica, which Litwa removed to a footnote, it says not only are having children the most important thing in life, but those who don't reincarnate essentially as sexless beings, maybe as lizards or something, but a being that is asexual and cannot reproduce. That's the punishment in the Hermetica for failing to have children and offspring in this life. And if it is about life and light, that tracks. It makes sense that they would have that view. Also, a religion that isn't pronatalist is not really a religion because it won't last beyond the generation that it's created in. If you create a religion and you're like, hey, we all need to die, well, that's Heaven's Gate. That's all these other religious cults that all kill themselves or die off or castrate themselves. Hermetica is body positive, children positive, life and light. 8, the mortal body is part of the world and is therefore good. But the essential human in the mortal body is drowned or clouded by inner illnesses like ignorance, rage, greed, spite, malice, and lust. The punishers, they're called, the punishers, and there's thousands of them. It's where Scientology gets the idea of the thetans in our body. 9, there are external forces, decanic, daimonic energies, zodiacal energies, and planetary powers which affect human freedom. Hermetic philosophy agrees with Christian thought that the human will is free, but it also recognizes forces in heaven and on earth that make life in the body limiting and difficult. These external forces are summed up by the word fate. 10, all people have nous, higher consciousness, but only virtue activates it. So that's bad news for those left-hand path people, right? His descriptions, the paragraphs below these principles are very important to read, and you need to get the book to go read those. 11, there are many rituals and sacraments, but no need for priests. All that is needed is a spiritual guide who can be anyone. 12, the chief human virtue is reverence, oisebia in Greek, and reverence is always involves childlike amazement at the beauty of the world of God. Beauty of the world, of God, and of other human beings. Such an important, ethic. That's a powerful ethic that I really wish more religions today and more religious people would actually take seriously. That would be a game changer for our planet, right? Yeah, Eusebia. And it reminds me, of course, as I talk about often with other magicians, about the idea of unless you were like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of God. That's sort of a really beautiful idea, and again echoed here in the Hermetica, because it demonstrates the mentality we should have as initiates and as magicians. As we enter into the mysteries, it shouldn't be as these powerful archmages or curious experimenters interested in analysis and experimentation, but as children, full of wonder, joy, and awe, and gratitude for life and light. That's the way to approach magic and spirituality, according to the Hermetica. 13, rebirth into divine consciousness can and should occur in this life. not in the next one, in this life. And that is what the Way of Hermes is all about. This whole text is about how to do that. And that's why Litwa retranslated, including the Nag Hammadi fragments from Coptic, and then reordered it and edited it as a path of initiation. First time that's been done. Also the first one to distinguish the translation of the word nous, as it can mean either higher consciousness or lower cognition. He's the first one to distinguish when it's meant which way. No other translation did that, which renders them basically all useless, in my opinion. If you don't know what nous is referring to, how can the text be of any help? 13, rebirth into divine consciousness can occur in this life. 14, there is a heavenly place of punishment and retrials through reincarnation. 15, those with an activated higher consciousness, when their mortal bodies dissolve, enter new dimensions, the 8th and 9th sphere. 16, ultimate deification is to become a power in the 9th sphere, always contemplating the all. So this, and we see this idea in the Hermetica of theosis, the divinization of us as independent beings. Whereas in Gnosticisms, you have more commonly the idea of henosis, unity with the one, which always makes me think of Dormammu in Doctor Strange, like, yes, you'll be part of the one and dissolve and lose your individuality. I prefer theosis to henosis, the idea that we rise up and maintain our individuality as star gods and angels. Of course, we won't know until we die. We won't know till we die. All right, I'll go through the little questions you guys got. Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, thanks. Like and subscribe. Share the show with your friends. Actually, let's do yeah, we only have a few questions. Yeah, Budge translations are trash. Yeah, I mean, they're not trash. They're time capsules. They show us the initial beliefs and ideas we got from research, and all of that then had to be redone when it turned out we were not translating the language right. And yeah, it was initial days. Again, Victorian scholarship, it can't hold for the most part, a torch to modern scholarship. We just have too much time since then to where we've made advancements and developed new technologies and new ways of understanding things. Like, dating, carbon dating alone changed the game, but also linguistics as well. Linguistics was just developing back then, and so there was there's a lot of loosey-goosey being played. Sorry, I don't know who they are still around. The Egyptians didn't build the pyramids. They are Atlantean legacy. But anyway, I mean, Atlantis is a fictional place from a fictional story that Plato wrote. But if we ever find evidence of it, I'll be there for it. Brothers are like, what's the best source you can go to learning Egyptian mythology? Modern Egyptologists, probably. I mean, there's tons of Egyptology going on. Do they all agree with each other? No. But do they actually know how to read the language today? Yeah. Like, that was like the Billy Carson thing, right? When he was like, oh, no one can even read this language. And then a professor, this lady pops up. She's like, I'm an Egyptologist. Here's Egyptian. Let me read it to you. And then she reads it out and translates it. Yeah, they know Egyptian. We know Egyptian. Go learn Egyptian. Go learn Coptic with Dr. Litwa, or Greek. Our spirits of the material. I do his Greek studies. Brian says, right, the church's interference in the recording on... Yeah, I get it. Malka the bride, the child of God. Malka betarshim vad rochat shekalim. Rachot. Date the record. The book is great. Thank you. I'm glad you love the book. The guy running a Satru folk assembly was saying spiritual possession makes one gay. Well, I think that makes him fake. Get it? Yeah, you do. Nous is a British slang term for good judgment. Nous. Well, nous is an ancient Greek word that first appears in the Iliad, and it's sort of translated as wit or inspired wit. Intuition, really, is how it's often understood. And the nous in the Hermetica is our daimon. It is our spirit. It is what bridges our soul to our spirit and our mind, and it connects the two. So it's very important. Who's that other guy? Which other guy? Billy Carson. Yeah, I know. Yeah, seeing Billy Carson taken down a notch was sort of painful, but also inevitable. I mean, most people were just ignoring him because, like, if people want to go off and make millions of dollars just fabricating information, then who cares, right? But yeah, and that Wes Huff guy, Wes Huff has got his own issues as an academic, and I have friends here in Vancouver that were in school with him in Toronto. Apologists always have some issues. They have some issues. Well, this has been a really fun Friday stream. I'm going to chill out for a bit, make some food, and then head off to my Dolman Wood game with my old buddies from high school, who again are all wonderful magicians themselves, and some are musicians. Most of us are musicians and magicians. Robert Edward Grant. Yeah, I actually really liked Robert Edward Grant till I saw his Gaia series, and then I lost all respect for him. What a clown. What a liar. He's just intellect. His brain is broken. His brain is completely broken. Yeah, sad to see that happen with Robert Grant. Lord of Ness says, I know it can be a bit of pain sometimes, but it helps in the end. Nothing but love. Oh, I love you too, man. I don't mind encountering those sort of ideas and stuff. I'll always share my perspective. Because again, I was one of these people that would just regurgitated, this stuff for many years, and then I went to university, and then I did my master's studies, and then I did doctoral studies, and then I gave up on academia and became a musician for most of my adult life. And I think it's really important. I think that I have a good mixture of, I'm not a hardcore academic, right? I'm a practicing magician, and professionally spent my career as a musician and author. And so, I like to mix things together. I like to see how they stress test each other. And ultimately, the end game is not to be right in life. It's about how you live. It's about right relationship in life. That's what I think. Anyway, what a great day. Thank you all for being here. It has been absolutely delightful. Please like and subscribe. Share the show. And if you can throw in a super chat, that'd be great. Oh, do we have another comment here? Let's see if there was one last comment. My interpretation of the Gaelic senchas is there is both schools of thought in Celtic traditions, Henosis and Theosis, Vedanta and Tantra. Yeah, I have never actually even thought about comparing that to that, but that sounds cool. I dig it. I dig it. Yeah. Anyway. Hack the planet! Hack the planet! Go hack the planet, kids. Hype this video, since you Americans are allowed to hype videos. We can't do that in Canada. Hype it for me, baby. Hype it. And we'll see you all very soon. If you're a member of my YouTube group, a patron, you can attend my Zoom hangout this Sunday. So join my channel, even just for a month, and hang out with me on Zoom. Talk to me about all the stuff we can't talk about online publicly. And we always have a great time. Sometimes they last an hour, sometimes they last 4 hours. We just go with the flow and try and have fun. We want to have fun. You should enjoy your life. Go embrace life and light. All right. And if you can attend a NokiaCon online or in person, you won't be disappointed. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Cheerio. Light and extension.
tonight, tonight.